So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview of the Shield Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today joining me on the couch is Alan Strathmann. He's the guitar player and singer for the band Ohpen Ahrms. So, Alan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I just got off work, came home. Glad to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, I got off work too. This is my hobby, my side hustle, if you say. So I listened to the album and I was reading the notes and I found it like pretty interesting that something that motivated the band was a lot of like progressive rock and rock from the 80s and 90s. And when I saw the name, I'm like Open Arms, and then I read Journey and I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. So let's me. I'm guessing you're a huge Journey fan.
Um, I guess you could say I grew up on that kind of music, and I think a lot of people who's not a Journey fan, and everybody that I ask knows their songs. Would I
They're
call myself,
classics.
yeah, the classics. I don't know if I'm a huge fan as much as it's just part of my, well, I guess it's fair to say, okay, I'm a fan. I'm a fan, but it's
Well,
part of the music I grew up
you
with.
named the band Open Arms, but I have a question for you. Because it's Open Arms, there's an H on Open and an H on Arms. What does the H stand for?
It doesn't stand for anything.
Yeah.
It's not as serious as all that. To be honest with you, to give you the real story is I've been in a
Yeah,
lot of
sure.
bands, and it's difficult to name a band. Frankly, I think if you think about it, you just want something that is words and is interesting. It's misspelled because it's rock and roll, like any Led Zeppelin, Def Leppard, whatever you want, it's sort of the music of that era. It's misspelled just for no other reason than to be misspelled. That being said, it also, when you search Open Arms spelled correctly, you get a lot of self-help material and a lot of meditative stuff. And it's just, there's no real seriousness behind it. It's just a
Okay.
name. And honestly, the connection with Journey is the song was, as a very young person, it was that record and that music was really important to me. But aside from being a name that everybody liked, everybody in the band, everybody I was playing with, everybody liked, it reminded me of listening to music when I was younger, and listening to lyrics and writing lyrics and hearing more than one meaning in something somebody sings or says. So there's no real other connection other than that. It was utilitarian to just go, I need a name. This is something interesting. And then I guess tongue in cheek a little bit, just misspelling it. It could be interpreted as Open Arms in a number of different ways, but it's not all
Good.
that serious.
Good, because Liz in Earsplit, who sends me the bands, I had a theory, and I thought that you spell Open Arms with an H on each one, so people wouldn't think that you're a Journey fucking cover band.
It also makes for a nice symmetrical letters per word. And also, if the logo is just it's like saying and
Yeah.
being able to have a logo that's reduced down, it's all simply to use things look good visually. And it's the tie to Journey is more an inspirational thing. And because if you've listened to the record, it doesn't
Oh,
sound
yes.
like,
I listened to the
yeah,
record and I'm like,
right.
this sounds nothing like Journey.
Right. It's never gonna sound like Journey. It's never supposed to be anything but a inspiration for what words to use and what name to have. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I've been listening to the album. So you're in another band that plays like doomgaze type of music, correct?
Yeah, both the drummer and I are in a band called Starless, which is currently not active. But we played for years in that band, and that's how we met.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit, how did this project came about, Open Arms?
It's sort of the shortened version is like a lot of people in the pandemic, I just was isolated and writing music because that's was something to do and something I needed to do to keep myself engaged and active and feel like I was being productive while the whole pandemic was happening. And I'm always in bands, and I always work with people who want to perform and record. I always want to record. I want to make records. I want to continue to make music. I have to keep doing it in some fashion, just as a creative person. And so the motivation came out of writing a bunch of material during the pandemic. And the result of that was, as I think I said, sort of in the bio, is it's like something about that time was very reflective and there was a lot of introspection going on. And I just wanted to write whatever music that I felt inspired to write. And I kind of just, it sounds corny to say, but go back to what you know and what your roots are. And I was listening to a lot of different records that really inspired me, like Clockwork, Queens of the Stone Age. That record really inspired me. Them Crooked Vultures really inspired me.
Great record, that Queens of the Stone Age record, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm hugely a fan of almost everything that they do. Probably not as much their older stuff, but as they really developed, I've become a huge fan. And really, more than Them Crooked Vultures record is deeply influential. And then
I remember that record. It's a shame that they only put one album out.
Let's hope for another one. I was fortunate enough to see them, so it's closest I'd ever get to seeing Led Zeppelin was to see John Paul Jones play bass for them. But then it's just going back to the music I grew up on, and I grew up in Seattle, Washington during the grunge years, so that's why it sounds the way it does. In some ways, there's a lot of '90s influence because that's when I was very young in my first bands. And
I love the 90s. I was growing up in the 90s. So anything that sounds 90s, it's good for me because I've said in other interviews, or like, I'm sorry, but the 90s music is still the best music ever.
It still has resonance, it still makes a lot of people happy and thoughtful, and it still inspires a lot of people. And there seems to be, I'm around a lot of young people playing music too, much younger than myself, and there seems to be a lot of interest still in that music. I see kids at 18, 19 years old with like Alice in Chains t-shirts on, and all the bands from that era. Seems to be something of a resurgence. But again, it's like, in order to just make music in an honest way, I have to write what makes me happy, what makes me excited, or makes me thoughtful. And that's what's going to come out. I think that's how the band came about, was I needed to write songs and I needed to push myself to do it again. In other words, be a singer-songwriter or a frontman, which I did in the 90s, and have subsequently played for other musicians. Many other musicians played bass for this, played guitar for that, sang backups for this. It is something that just I was forced into the position to do it by the pandemic. And then luckily enough, I found people that, as we came out of the pandemic, that Quinn, for one, the drummer from that previous project, and then found other people that responded, and they're the band now. So it's just something that is motivated. As a creative, you take the reins at some point, and you just drive a project as far as you can. I just told everybody, here's a bunch of music. I'm still writing music. Let's make records. And this is the first of what will be, I hope, to continue to be more and more records. We wrote and recorded twice as much music, so we're well on our way to the next record already. Although I think that the record will change, the music will change a great deal because we're more familiar with each other as musicians and as a band. So that always changes things a great deal when you spend a few years with some people.
Yeah, and something you got guest musicians on the record. You got saxophone. You're bringing that. There's something like lacking in like rock music that they bring those instruments. So let's talk a little bit about the tracks from the album. I know that the first single that you put out is "Don't Look for Me There," which is like, dare I say, like the ballad. because you know that word is like the ballad of the
So
album.
far.
So yeah, so far. So tell me, let's talk a little bit about the inspiration for that song and what the song is about.
Um, it's about, I guess it's like, I guess I kind of explained a little bit in the notes or the quote about the song, that it's an exercise in, for me, being able to communicate something through words that is about two things really. One is very personal to me, about going through something that made me realize that connection can be dissolved or altered, personal connection, based on the sort of having different ideals, right? About how, what you pay attention to, and how you deal with things. I know that's vague, but the other connective topic, I guess, is that there's something about that ties to how we are wrapped up in trying to do these big tasks. Say science is trying to figure out, quantum physics or some sort of quantum relationship, or we're trying to figure out something through religion, or something like the idea of the lyric, what looking for bird sign, is this idea that we can watch nature to give us some clues as to what is going to happen. And the disconnect is that we invest so much in believing these things, even science, that we get mired in all these little details, and we forget the purpose for why we're trying to figure these larger issues out. And I'm sorry if that's a little vague, but the idea is vague. The lyrics are about trying to describe that to the listener. Like,
Yeah,
what is that
music
like?
is all about interpretation.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, interpretation. And I know that the second track on the album, "Lying Beside You," that was inspired by a reference to Escape, the Journey album from 1981, correct?
Yeah, it's the first lyric for the song "Open Ahrms,"
Yeah,
right?
lines. Yeah. So
Right.
yeah.
So it's, but the lyrics to me are, they have many ways to interpret that. Like, in a sort of dark sense, I may be lying beside you quietly, physically prone, like lying down, right? I could also be beside you and be your compatriot and telling you falsehoods. I could be lying to you, right? And I know that's like play on words is something that, can be trite, it can be goofy. But I think for me, when I thought of that lyric and I was thinking about listening to that music for the first time, through the process of listening to all that music, I was thinking about the meanings of words being interpreted differently in the way that lyrics work. When you sing
Mhm.
them, your interpretation may be very different than the intent of the writer. Same when you read words, same when you read poetry, or you read a text of some sort. It's your interpretation, and groupings of words just mean different things at different moments, and they have different intentions. And I think for me, it's a little bit process oriented, like putting words together to say what I mean comes with the knowledge that they can be interpreted in different ways. So the reason to take the lyric was that, okay, what does this mean? And since you've been able to hear the song, we haven't released it yet, but when you
Yeah.
hear the song, there's nothing, the line isn't in the song per se. It's the idea that lying as a person in a grave, or lying as a person, as an object, it's the way it's used in the song, right? I think the lyric, to give it away, is "lying frozen here" is not about lying paralyzed, because the character in the song isn't necessarily a person. When I refer to the she, or this feminine person in the song, that isn't a person as much as it is an idea. Like, I guess in one interpretation, the lyrics, if you read them, are, she could be the idea of knowing something. She could be like knowledge personified, or some kind of idea of intellect. And I think, to be honest with you, a lot of the music from the 80s and 90s and rock and power ballads often put this character in this position, like a woman, like that the person is dying to meet this woman, or my girl left me, whatever. And if you interpret that as a, it's a really weird sort of, a little bit patriarchal sort of thing that all these men were writing these songs and all this, like putting these women on pedestals or treating them badly or whatever it was. But if you interpret that thing or that she as something other than a person, then the meaning opens up. And I guess I was sort of thinking, this is funny. We got a band that's influenced by this type of music. Why not write a song that uses that personification as an idea, as opposed to, I know I'm getting a little bit in my head about it, but yeah.
No, it's interesting. I haven't read the lyrics because on the promo the lyrics aren't included. If not, I would have like dived more into the lyrics. But when you know a lot of like the pop songs or rock songs from 90s or 80s, like they have, yeah, I know about like a female character, but when you think about it, there's the other way around. A song by heart, like all I want to do is make love to you. People always like that song. They're like, oh, they say it that like to a loved one. Like, and if you read the lyrics, she's talking about picking a hitchhiker, having sex in a motel,
Yeah.
cheating on her husband because he can't get her pregnant. And I'm like, wow. And this was a song that people dedicated. I'm like, did they listen to the lyrics?
Exactly. And think about Magic Man, right? Like it's all through that type of music so that we interpret it as one way as an audience. And it's really interesting to, I don't know, just open up your perception about what lyrics mean. And, you know, I don't want to make it sound like this was all an exercise, but in some way, the process of writing music, especially lyrics are challenging. Vocals are challenging, but I wanted it to be meaningful to me. So some of it becomes kind of like, why would I write this and what does it mean to me? It's still doing the job of being lyrics and being vocals because, in my opinion, that the word should connect to you in some way. You know, if it's just spouting gibberish, it's a little bit harder to connect in some ways, which isn't to say that there isn't noisy music that has the unintelligible vocals and stuff. I find that to be powerful too. But if you're going to enunciate words and have a meaning, part of it should connect to someone or resonate in some way, even if you're not recognizing exactly, you know, just as you say, is misinterpreting those lyrics by heart. How many people have misinterpreted lyrics from, you know, Bob Seger or Steve Miller for years, or some of these artists that, you know, people sing lyrics wrong all the time, right? And they still love those songs and they identify.
Or dedicate songs like it boggles me when people dedicate, like, for example, Someone Like You by Adele. I'm like, she's saying that it's like, read the lyrics. Like, this is not a song to dedicate. But something very, like, a lot of like rock bands in the 90s, because we're talking about like lyrics that are hard to decipher or left to interpretation. A lot of like Kurt Cobain wrote lyrics that they were hard to decipher sometimes, and other artists like Gavin Rossdale from Bush, like I still have no idea what glycerin is about. So
but they resonate still, right?
But they resonate still, correct?
Yeah, and a lot of Kurt Cobain in particular, a lot of open-ended metaphors that could be felt strongly, but regardless of what you assume that they mean, and a lot of it doesn't really seem to mean a lot, right? But something about the way your brain puts, you know, I'm on a plane, I can't explain, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does that conjure in your head? You know, like a lot of interesting things. And if you're singing it with a particular type of delivery or emotion, then it's just, that's part of the interesting thing about it, I think. And in my own way, behind the scenes, I'm having fun with that, just to see what'll happen. I mean, every song and every record is something of a set of experiments that hopefully people are doing to see what they can do to communicate something, right?
You living in Seattle, did you get to see those shows back in the 90s?
I did.
So jealous.
I'm just younger than a lot of those guys. So I remember standing outside of the Central Tavern, not quite old enough to see Alice in Chains play, but then getting to see, you know, Nirvana at, you know, at these all ages places. And yeah, I got, you know, I mean, at the time too, especially, it's a small place. It was smaller before Microsoft and Adobe and all of the places blew it up. it was smaller, and so you knew if you didn't know them closely, and I can't say I knew a lot of these people really closely, but I did play in a band or two with some of them, and the fledgling bands, right? And then they were around and you would see them and your girlfriend would know their girlfriend or something, you know. It was a small place. So at the time it was really interesting. And I remember moving away from there and forgetting and then coming to Chicago. And I think when I moved to Chicago, I went to play pool somewhere and the jukebox was nothing but bands that I grew up with. And it was like I'd forgotten, like, oh my God, this is the Midwest. This is so impactful to still to this day, that the jukebox on Milwaukee Avenue is playing Alice in Chains and Candlebox and Guns N' Roses and all that stuff that was many years old at that time, you know. So yeah, it was interesting to be there at that time. You know, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I think it shaped a lot of, you know, like sense I have for community or being around people and sharing experience with musical experiences with people. And then it undeniably shaped how I end up writing music. I was there, and that it's obviously going to seep in, being of that
Yeah, of
time
course.
and place.
Yeah, it becomes part of your psyche, like the music that and the place that you're in. So I want to show the artwork for the album that's coming out on March 15th. So here's the cover of the album. So it's pretty simple cover, you know, the O, the H, and the A and the H. And tell me a little bit about this album cover and what you're trying to convey. Is this a picture, right?
No, I mean, full disclosure, it's AI, you know, and I
Ah,
could,
well, God damn it, it looks so good.
yeah,
So
I mean, and it looks okay digitally. It's not going to be the cover of the CD because it's not the type of resolution that we want to use. But it looks good as a digital thumbnail. And, you know, frankly, I tried to get some art from a couple of artists I like, and everybody's really busy. It wasn't a matter of like not wanting to pay artists or anything like that. It was just I needed a record cover. So I've played around with AI, and it took me, you know, about 2,000 photos or prompts, right? Iterations of prompts to get it. And then again, like the title, like the logo, like the name of the band, there's nothing really in this image except for there's something dark and the potential narrative that is happening in the picture. And it's weird, right? I mean, it's like high tension power lines in the ocean. There's fire, you know, it's dark, it's foreboding, but it has a sense of, you know, that looking at the grand scheme of things through the lens of, I don't know, like technology that's sort of barely under our control and is problematic and dangerous and all that stuff. There's no deeper meaning behind it. It's just, again, just like the logo, it's like, what does it look like? Does it convey something that is interesting? And you know, so much of what we look at as art and letters and text and print and photographs and all this stuff is about what we put together in our own heads, right? So there's no, I can't say that there's any other motivation than to make a record cover that we thought looked cool and had it some connection to some of the things we feel about big dramatic events, right? Like there is a lot of drama in it, and there's a lot of drama, and it ends up being a lot of drama in the music. So it's just something that connected, I think. But again, the print on the CD and the covers looks very, very different. It's going to be a printable version that's been way. I've worked on it in Photoshop and so forth, and it's going to have a very different feel and
okay.
color palette. You know.
So it's a lot of the do it yourself for the band. So the album, so are you gonna have like a release show or what are the immediate plans for Open Arms?
We're just now thinking about booking shows. Truth be told, we needed to find a bass player for a while, and that process. I've always been really lucky, and again was ultimately very lucky. But we've only just really got the bass player within the last month or so. I think it maybe at this point it's a month, maybe a little bit longer. But you know, we're all adults with lives, and we schedule rehearsals, and you know, I don't want to take out this band out until we all feel like we are at that point where we're really nailing it. It's not the easiest. I wouldn't say it's like, wow, it's so complicated or progressive or weird, but there are challenging parts in the songs, and there's a lot of singing, multi-layered harmonies, and
Yeah, that's
there's
something I heard a lot of the song. There's a lot of harmonies that I think bands today don't do a lot of like vocal harmonies. To me, my favorite band that did vocal harmonies was Alice in Chains. Like
yeah,
that combination
sure.
of and Lane and Jerry Cantrell, it's just pure magic.
Yeah, of
Unlike
course.
you, I got to see them now a few years ago with William Duvall, and William Duvall, he's a great vocalist in his own right, but like, do I wish that I've seen them with Lane? Yes. Even though I'm loving the new stuff that they're doing. Their comeback records have been great. That's a band to me that they have no bad records. So, but you got to see
Yeah.
them with the original version, so I'm jealous.
Yeah, well, they were just kids, just like we were. I saw them before they got signed, and was watching them grow as they got signed, and they were a very different band early on, and getting signed and getting a good producer really changed what they were ultimately going to become. So, but as far as like our plans is like we will have shows booked soon. The record will come out this on this cycle on the 15th. But we probably will start playing later in the spring towards the summer. Like I said, I think we all really want to deliver it in the best way we can. And there's things that need to be nailed down in rehearsals. And we've actually started writing new music. So when we perform, we already know we're going to play at least two new songs that aren't on the record. So I don't want to stop writing music just because things are happening, like records are coming out, or because I just think we get better and better every time we write a song. So we'll
Plus,
gradually.
you get the band. You're a newer band, so people haven't heard the music yet completely. So it's good because they haven't heard the sound. So it's a fresh band to take out there on the road. So I know I had the band camp that I'm gonna put the link so people that wanna get it digitally or pre-order the CD. So this will be out on the 15th. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a cool record, and I like it because they have the vibes, everything that we've been just discussing over these like 30 minutes or so. So
Yeah.
so once you have more, there'll be some shows later on, but for now you're focused on getting the album out and practicing and getting tight, so you have that tight live show when you get out on the road and present this to the public.
Yeah, and always writing music is this is a particular way that haven't done as much in the past. Usually you write a bunch of music, you play in a band, you go play it before an audience, and you road test a lot of the material, and none of this has been tested. So it'll be really interesting to see what people think of it. A live thing is very different than a record, obviously. And we'll get a lot of that feedback very quickly from playing shows with other bands and things. So it's a different sort of order of operations, but it's efficient in my mind to create something like a record so what the band sounds like, and then when you deliver it, you deliver your version in your head that you're translating to the audience, and having a good idea of what your band sounds like. I think for me personally, I love making records and getting to stand back and listen to what it is you managed to sort of lay down and in perpetuity. And but it's a little different mode of doing things. But so was the pandemic and the material. We weren't going to go out and play shows then anyway. So the point of having a
No.
band,
No,
right?
when I started the channel, and like when I interviewed bands, there was no show, nothing to promote. So yeah, it's good
Right.
that there's stuff to promote. So before I let you go, I haven't asked this question for people in a while. I remember when the channel started, I did a video with a friend of mine where we talk about like the top 5 records that you would take to a desert island with. So Alan, I will ask you this: like, if you have to choose 5 records to listen to your whole life and take to an island, which ones would you choose and why?
Wow. I'm gonna take some of the easy ways out, I guess. There'd have to be some Bach in there. I grew up on classical music. There would have to be physical graffiti. And right now, I'd say like Clockwork might be there, but if we're talking 5 records, it might get edged out by some more classic things. Dark Side of the Moon.
Great one.
Uh,
Yeah.
how many we got so far? Is that 3
You
or
said 4, unless like Clockwork, you would bump it out.
okay? Wow, it's a tough one. I think Emmylou Harris, is it Wrecking Ball? That might be in there. Oh, Exile on Main Street, without a doubt, would be in there. The Stones, for sure. It's kind of a big record for me. And if I don't know if I've reached the limit, but I might top it off with Colosse by Meshuggah or something like that, you know.
Oh, that's an interesting combination.
But you
Going
know, if I'm
from
going to be stuck with it, I want to rotate this stuff around, you know. And I was
yeah.
thinking for variety rather than I was thinking for fidelity or something. I don't know.
No, that's a good one. So Alan, I want to thank. It's nice to meet you. I've
Nice to
been
meet you.
listening to the record. I know it's right now. There's nothing on streaming services
That's the
because
15th.
that's
Yeah.
the 15th. So people, you'll have to wait for the 15th to listen to the album. But you can pre-order in Bandcamp. Can they listen to the single?
They can listen to the first 2 singles
The
that have
first
been
two singles.
released.
So
Right.
yeah, listen to them on Bandcamp. The first 2 singles are there. I think I have the yeah, I have the link, so I'll post so people can go there. So Ohpen Ahrms out the 15th. So I would recommend this to people who like all the type of music that we've just been talking about. If you like melody, if you like some like distorted guitars and progressiveness, you will rock, you will enjoy this. So Alan, again, thank you for joining me today virtually on my couch. It's
Yes.
been fun. And
Thank you so much.
until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.